Alright, so this video is called Identity Shifting. I'm going to explain it to you from an internal aspect, from my perspective, best here I can. So identity shifting and what it is and how to do it the best way for me. So identity shifting is not necessarily what you think, like shape shifting, not like that, not no mystical shit. I don't mean like that. What I mean when I say identity shifting is basically you can be the best version of yourself once you identify as the best version of yourself. And it's that simple. But what I mean is you have to define what the best version of yourself is to you at that time. So becoming the best version of yourself at the time is assuming that you're already internally the best version of yourself. And because you're assuming you already are, you then actually are. But what you would have to do is, for, let's say, a manifestation of identity shift, you would have to write this new version of yourself, this new version of yourself's beliefs, self-concepts, let's say friends, let's say opportunities, let's say self-worth, all of that. So the new version of yourself, when I say identity shifting, it's just a different version of yourself. So let's say someone's trying to change how much, let's say their self-worth is, or they're trying to increase their money. They can't increase their money without being the version of themselves, the better version of themselves, where they've already increased money. So once you write something down and assume that this has already taken place internally, and then have essentially a visualization of a 5 to, let's say, 10-second scene of someone you know close to you congratulating you, which you can do by just being in a relaxed state, and then go into a meditation and you can visualize or experience something intensely. And emotion is the language of the subconscious. So you emotionally experiencing something, the more emotionally intense the experience is, the more the subconscious remembers it. Whether you don't, the subconscious does. So the subconscious, the same way the language of human is speaking, the language of the subconscious is emotion. So happy, sad, all emotions, that's the subconscious clings to emotions. That's the subconscious way of communicating emotions. So identity shifting, like I said, is having a visualization, a new self-worth, new self-concept, all of that stuff. But then now, once it's written down and you now have that visualization, by rehearsing that memory in your head constantly, it's already happened. Now, because you've emotionally experienced it, you would then emotionally intensely feel it as well. And like we said earlier, emotion is the language of the subconscious. So the more you can feel the visualization and identify as that version of yourself in the visualization and assume this has already taken place, because you're assuming it's already taken place, you're now operating where this memory or this visualization, what was once present, is now in the past. Because once you assume it's been done, it already has, because the subconscious accepts whatever you tell it is true. So the subconscious obeys whatever you tell it, good or bad. It obeys anything you tell it. So once you tell it that this has already been done and you assume it has. But highs and lows are normal. So just because, let's say, when you first visualized it, the emotions were very intense, and then over time the emotion level is not as intense, that doesn't mean that it's not taking place. That just means that it's normal to not feel as excited as you once was about something. That's normal. So there's nothing wrong with it. But with identity shifting, because you're now this new version of yourself, it's already taken place. So once you consciously are able to do your actions and to operate from that version of yourself internally, not externally, internally. So when you know you're that version of yourself internally, it therefore has already taken place, because Manifestation is an internal game, so it's shifting internally and not being emotionally dependent on seeing your reality change. So reality, the realm of illusion, could look like nothing's changing. It could look like, or you could see it straight away as whatever you tell the subconscious. But anyway, so it can look like that, but because you know it internally and you're secure internally and you shift it to an internal aspect, so you start saying internally you feel, let's say, fulfilled, satisfied, cherished, all that stuff, because you're saying it internally and not looking for it externally. You therefore have already satisfied yourself because you're doing it from an internal aspect. So because it's from an internal aspect, the manifestation is now easier because you're validating yourself essentially internally. So no one has to validate you, and on top of that, not looking externally. Because if you look externally, then you'll be ruled externally. So for example, someone that, let's say, wants a certain amount of money, they might feel happy when they get that amount of money. But because they're looking at money externally as the problem that will fix them, once they then lose it, they feel even worse because they're looking at something external. Whereas if internally they already feel fulfilled, then that means they're good with or without money. Anything you're good with or without, everything you have in abundance, as within, as without. So because everything you have in abundance, when you're good with or without it, it makes the manifestation even stronger and even quicker because you're not attached to it. So whatever you're not attached to, it's easier to manifest because internally you just know it and assume it's true, and then therefore it's done. So you just have to have the same concept, but with your desired reality, which is just your manifestation. So you just have to have that same concept, and then people will be like, okay, well, what about the time aspect? With the time aspect, you just have to do the same thing with a manifestation that you would with something that you do simply. So the same way something you simply manifest, you just assume that it's done and you go about your day and there's no importance and it's always done. You have to have the same concept for your manifestations. So the concept people mistakenly make with manifestations is they'll write a manifestation and then they will then shift to this version of themselves. But the thing with this version of themselves, they'll make their manifestation feel important, or they'll assume it's important. Because they assume it's important now, their mind then builds and anticipates it. Because it anticipates it and builds it up, therefore it feels like a bigger thing. But again, people manifest every day. There's something you manifest every day, very easy. For example, let's say you're good at a game. And you know every time you play that game, I'm gonna win. And you just know it before it even starts. And then you wonder why you keep winning. That's manifestation. It's just simple because you wouldn't see it as manifestation because there's no importance to it. But it is manifestation because you assumed that you was gonna win. And you kept winning. But there was just no importance to it. So that's why when you're doing it, you're unconscious of it. You're just winning, thinking, yeah, I just always win. You're used to it. Manifestation is the same concept. If you have your manifestation, assume it's done, and there's no importance to it whatsoever, then it's the same thing. You can do the same thing with manifestation. They just have to be clearly written out, and you have to know what you're manifesting, because you can't want to manifest something or want to manifest and not know what you're manifesting. So you just have to know what you are manifesting. But through being a new version of yourself, and like I said, identifying as this new version of yourself, rather than knowing what you want to manifest, you can just skip that bit and write down what you want to manifest and then act as if you're already that version of yourself. And like I said, assume it's already taken place. And then once the importance is minimalized and there's no importance to it, it's just like the FIFA concept. The manifestations just come like that, because there's no importance So you say it, you know it's true, you assume it's been done, it just comes like that because there's no importance. But it's only things that people put importance over and they view as above them or they view as a priority. It's them things that are a bit more, not challenging necessarily, but that person might be a bigger thing for them when it doesn't have to be. You can just say there's no importance to it. And because you're operating and identifying as the version of yourself that's already done it, there was no importance. So you just then have to consciously be that version of yourself when you're doing things. And because you're that version of yourself when you're doing things, because it's a new frequency, which is a new awareness, there's new, essentially, you're doing the action differently, which creates new results because you're doing the action, but from the new version of yourself that's already done it, already successful, already got what you want. So because you're operating as that version of yourself, it's already done. So you just have to operate as that version of yourself when doing the actions. And then because you're doing the actions, but as that new version of yourself, you get new results. Because there's a new cause. So because there's a new cause, it creates a new effect, which creates new results. But it starts all internally and shifting to the version of yourself that's already seen the visualization and the visualization of you being congratulated for what you want to manifest. Shifting to that version of yourself has already taken place with no importance and writing down what you clearly want because you're already that version of yourself. It therefore has taken place. You just have to then lower the importance, minimalize the importance, make there be no importance to it, make it be effortless, easy, all of that. And because you are, or you then write down that this version of yourself is effortless, it then is effortless and will come effortlessly with no importance. Because just like you assume, that's how it took place, and now you shift and identify as the version of yourself where that's already taken place. So then all the actions that you consciously operate as that version of yourself where it feels easy, effortless, no importance, it will then take place with that same no importance and feel easy and effortless. But it all starts internally. And that's why manifestation is shifting internally, but not being emotionally dependent on seeing your reality change. That's essentially Nero's definition, which I agree, I think is a very good definition of manifestation. So because internally you'll say stuff like, let's say you're satisfied, you're fulfilled, you're cherished, you're abundant, your prosperity, you're all these things, yeah. Because you're looking at it internally, whatever's going on in reality, the illusion realm, you're not swayed by it because it's internal. But people that look external, they're emotionally dependent on seeing their reality change. So that's why reality can fuck them over because they're emotionally dependent on seeing reality change. But reality is not reality. Reality is the illusion realm. So because they're emotionally dependent on that realm, therefore, like I said with the money concept, they could have money and they can lose the money, and that will sway their emotions. And because reality is aware that it can do this, it will keep doing it to that individual. That's why you have to shift internally. Because when you shift internally, you're good with, let's say, the 2000, you're good without the 2000. Therefore, that person, if they say they'll always have 2000, or they're always, let's say, financially abundant, they never have money problems, because they know it internally rather than looking externally at the 2000, because they know that internally, a shift from an internal aspect now, regardless of the 2000, they'll never be financially burdened because they're now operating from an internal aspect. They're not looking at externally at the 2000. So identity shifting and manifestation starts internally. This is identity shifting explained in 10 seconds is 15 minutes. So This is identity shifting explained in 15 minutes from an internal aspect.